What is going on? I want to welcome you from half court for today, September 13th, 2023. One of your hosts, Sean Murphy, alongside the man, the myth, the legend, back from knocking out COVID in the fourth round by TKO, Jeff Iafrady. Jeff, you survived, my guy. It did you so bad you had to move out of the mansion so that they could quarantine and clean it. How are you holding up?
I'm doing all right. I'm out here in the middle of nowhere on the Detroit, alongside the Detroit River. Yeah, COVID beat my ass. I had it the first time last year, and it was like, okay, like it stinks. You test positive, whatever.
Yeah.
Last week, I felt it. Like COVID walked in, slapped me in the face. Like it was
I
rough,
just
but
remember
I'm
getting a
back.
text like, I didn't even know this was still a thing. And
No.
it's like, oh, you're going to learn today, Jeff.
Yeah, I'm fired up. I'm happy I'm back. I got my Lions hat. I'm ready to go.
Oh, yeah, I know this is a basketball pod, but let's be honest. There's a lot of crossover between Woodward sports fans and from half court fans. That Lions game was freaking amazing. That was so fun.
I'm still fired up.
Oh my goodness. I'm fired up as well because we also have our other guy with us, 6'3" with the Marquette Heat, sitting in that beautiful seat. That man, the myth, the legend, Troy Sergey. Yo, Troy, what's up, man? How you doing?
Doing good, Sean. Mel Tucker got fired. That's kind of crazy.
Yep, that is a whole topic of conversation that is above my pay grade to talk about. But in all seriousness, before we do get into basketball and stuff, do you think it's crazy to think that like Michigan State's future is really grim, especially with USC about to join the Big Ten, Oregon's about to join the Big Ten, like, and
for football for sure. For football for sure, yeah.
I mean, as long as they still have Tom Izzo, they're going to be fine in the basketball side. But how much longer do they have Tom Izzo?
Yeah,
right. But I still think even when Izzo leaves, I mean, the program itself, I feel like, has been stable. I mean, I guess it's so hard to tell. You're right, Sean. But I'm optimistic with it that it's not 100% Izzo. It's mostly Izzo.
Yeah.
But I feel like the program has made such a name for itself over the past 30 years. And even before Izzo too. I mean, Scott Skiles, Magic Johnson. I mean, there's hope for the program. Go ahead.
Yeah, the program has tutelage, it has history, and I don't think it's going away in that regard. But Jeff, I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are about this. I think if this season of college sports is teaching us anything so far, it's that the NIL is changing the entire game. Like Colorado literally brought in 70 or 80 new players, and now they're 2-0 after getting one win last year. Even on the basketball side of things, like the NIL has just completely changed how all that works. So my question with that is, are they going to be able to compete? Are they going to be able to hang, especially with a lot of the stuff that's been, coming out around that school over the last 5-10 years? I mean, this is bad enough, but that in conjunction with the Larry Nassar stuff, I mean, man.
It's terrible timing. I mean, this is like, you already know who's coming to town in the Big Ten, and then now you have Mel Tucker and now the accusations, which he had his response today. And if you haven't read that, please read it. It's actually kind of comical, his response. But regardless,
he apparently tried to question the credibility of the same woman he brought on campus to talk to his players. And he apparently took a shot at Jim Harbaugh for no reason too.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. MSU will be fine in the long run, but it just seems like the school can't catch a break. Like that's what it seems like. Not just from this, but other things like the tragedy that happened not too long ago. To be honest with you,
yeah, the shooting that
and now they have the Mel Tucker stuff. We'll see. We'll see. They're bringing back D'Antonio to come help out, being a advisor.
I'm a little happy about that. I like D'Antonio.
So. Oh yeah, that'll be fun. I mean, a story's big when we have to bring it up on a professional basketball podcast when it's about college football. You know what I mean? Yeah. So, but guys, let's get into what people were brought here to see, and that is from Half Court Reach. And every week we talk all things NBA basketball, all things Detroit Pistons. If you like that, be sure you like this video, hit that subscribe button, smash that notification bell so you don't miss the pod. And it does come each and every week, despite the fact that we missed last week due to my dumb self. But anyway, be sure you follow my guys on X, at Troy Sergey 44, and you can follow Jeff on X at Jeff Iafrady. And you can even follow myself on X at Sean Half Court. But with that, guys, let's talk some freaking Pistons, baby. I mean, we are 2-3 weeks away now from training camp, and we can finally start getting some questions answered. But a question that's starting to really become a predominant topic of conversation is what's going to happen with the bigs. I know that's something we've started to peel back the curtain on and start to dive in a bit on on this channel. But Keith Langlos, the the web editor, one of the chief content creators over at the Pistons. Shout out to him. He wrote a piece about with training camp approaching, just like what the Pistons could possibly do with their four bigs and how do they use them. And so I think we all agree that we're probably not going to have four bigs by the time the season closes. However, having said that, do you think having all of these bigs could potentially be a strength for the Pistons and not a hindrance like a lot of people think it is? Or do you think they're really going to be spending a lot of time truly figuring out what this big rotation is actually going to look like?
Well, for at least I'll speak for me. I'm you guys know how I feel about Marvin Bagley. So I think that experiment to me at least
Absolute dog, you love him.
Yeah, it's over for me.
You got all of his jerseys in your closet.
Yeah, I did not make that mistake. I do have Killian's jersey. And I made that mistake when he was drafted, but regardless, the whole four big thing, at least for me, and I know there's been conversation on Wiseman, a potential future of Wiseman and Duren as a front court. Like for me, I don't think that's happening at all. I think Isaiah Stewart, you pay him to be your starting four. I think ideally what he can do defensively, you see the shot coming along. I know if whoever's starving for basketball, you watch a lot of Rico Hines footage, you got a chance to see Isaiah Stewart out there. Shot looks good. So for me, I'm set on the
footage dropped over the weekend, by the way, for anyone that's thirsting for it.
It helps, I'll tell you that. But Isaiah Stewart solidified himself at the four for me. Now, James Wiseman is interesting because maybe situationally you could see him and Duren together. I think Wiseman, we all know we saw it last year. He brings a lot to the table. I think as a 7-footer, he can do a lot more things than just a traditional big. Pretty good passer. He can obviously stretch the floor. So there's things there. Maybe you can utilize those guys in the front court. But to me, like for just where the NBA is going and with the spacing you're going to have on the court with Cade, Ivy, you want more guys. Well, Isaiah can guard multiple positions, but also guys that can just shoot that you can rely on. And I think Isaiah's trending in that direction. So it's something that, Troy Monty is going to have to figure out early in the season. But the whole four big thing, as much as it is like Troy's been collecting a lot of bigs, people forget early on in Troy's tenure here with the Pistons, this team lacked rebounding. It lacked an interior presence. Like there was a need for these guys at one point. So we'll see how the season trends, but in terms of who I see in the future at the 4 and 5, it's no doubt Stewart and Duren. The rest will kind of just figure themselves out. Whether Wiseman solidifies himself as a piece here in the future or not, I think Bagley and and Wiseman are the two that eventually we'll see where their future holds. But Bagley for sure, I think he's dealt by the end of the season, hopefully by the trade deadline. I just think he's an awkward fit to me as he stands right now.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely feels like circumstances with him changed once the trade deadline last year took place. Troy, where's your head at with all of this as of September of 2023? Because obviously, there's the limited run we saw with those guys at the end of last season. However, you kind of question, the validity and value of those reps with all the losing that they endured. There's the summer league reps that we saw, which gave mixed results, some really good, some really not so good, right? But, going into the season, how do you see this playing out?
Yeah. As much as I love a guy like Wiseman, I would love to see what his market is. Maybe not trade him, of course, before the season starts, but I would see if Wiseman can be a guy that you can use as a trade package by the deadline and really have the first half of the season, I guess, when he is wearing the Pistons uniform to see what he can do, but more importantly, to bump up that trade value. Because I just think, for Stu, for sure, we know is a part of this long-term. Duren, long-term. With you, Jeff. Bagley, not long-term. it's hard to see those three on the court together at the same time. And I think even in the summer league, we saw what even like a Jabari Smith did to us with Houston. I just see where the league is going. And Jeff, you already brought up that. And with PTSD of Greg Monroe, Drummond, and Josh Smith, I guess I'm not ready to make that commitment in September to those three. Two of those guys for sure, Duren and Stu, I'm ready to commit on.
Right.
But I do like Wiseman, but I want to see his trade stock go up and then hopefully dealt them by February.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the thing that you can count on of the four bigs that you have, Isaiah Stewart is the one that for a fact that you can essentially place with any of them because he has that ability to play multiple positions. The limited four that he has played, he thrived while doing so. And so I think he's definitely shown, like he's probably the most certain of his role of anyone on the team. Jalen Duren, a guy that Troy Weaver said, I'm not putting a ceiling on that kid. We've seen how talented he is and how much potential he has. We're pretty confident he's going to be starting day one. He's going to be, he's going to be really the focal point of the bigs that they're building around. And I think ultimately what comes, what happens to guys like James Wiseman, specifically is what can you show through this season that exemplifies that you can be a complementary piece to what they're building in Detroit going forward. Because Marvin Bagley and James Wiseman are both skilled bigs in their own right, but the skill set that they bring is something that they don't need because they already have. And on top of that, the areas where they can chip in or where they can easily make an impact without having the ball in their hands, they don't really do so well at. And that's kind of and that's the tricky thing is especially for guys like Bagley, like Wiseman, who were dominant post bigs, clearly are used to getting fed the ball and being able to, attack in the paint. When you get, these guys have been number one options their entire lives. Now you get to the NBA level, having to figure out like what your actual role is within this thing. Like it's going to be interesting. Because with James Wiseman, there's no reason why he can't be a phenomenal backup big or even a solid starting big somewhere in the league. I mean, this was a number 2 overall pick for crying out loud. Right. But there's just from the aspect of the defensive ability, the overall basketball IQ, there's too many things that just make you concerned when you do have to have him out on the court with, say, a Duren or even a Bagley himself. Like if you're gonna have one of those bigs that you're not entirely sure on, like you need to be sure about the rest of your personnel, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right.
And so,
well, I was going to say, yeah, I mean, it's all about making the right decisions and going back to everything we've been saying during the season and now in the off season too. Troy Weaver is your man to make those decisions. Monty Williams is going to be a guy that is developing those guys. And again, it's hard even with Wiseman too, because he is younger than we give him credit to. He is still in a maturing stage where he could show us something totally this year that we're not expecting. I mean, there is those possibilities, but at least September of what we've seen, I really think that everything you said, Sean, about the skilled big men, but not necessarily something that can be totally, compatible with Duren. There might need to be decisions being made there. So, and with the league being, of course, a guard-centered heavy league, and spacing being such a big factor with successful teams in the past 5-10 years, the Steph Curry era. I would like to see maybe a shooter come in, another shooter. We know we got Harris, and I know Cade's 3 is going to be even higher than it was his rookie year. I would love to see maybe putting our stock into that a little more.
Yeah, and I think the other thing with Wiseman too, which, and this goes for not just Wiseman, for multiple players, is the leash is becoming a lot shorter for certain guys. And this is a good thing. This is where you want to be in the rebuild, where, you start to kind of find your own identity. You start to find your building blocks. You start to know kind of how you want to construct your team, who's your franchise player, so on and so forth. But with that comes also like, hey, how do we build around these guys the best and surround them with, the type of talent or the type of guys like you pick up a Monte Morris or a Joe Harris, guys that can shoot the ball. Like that's ideal and what you want and what you're trying to build. So for a guy like Wiseman, who also, going back to his college days, the COVID era, and then of course not playing consistently with Golden State, like he's so far behind that I don't know if there'll be enough runway for him this year. But like Troy said, maybe we'll see. Maybe we'll see more of James Wiseman. But I also could see a situation where Cade's looking like an all-star player. Ivy's taking that step. Everyone's taking that step, and Wiseman's still coming along. There's going to be an expiration date on some players, and Killian would be the obvious one, where it's like, hey, if you can't put it together, you're going to get replaced. But that's a good thing. That's where you want to be as a franchise.
Yeah, 100%. And obviously going for James Wiseman was a swing. And I know people question it, especially with having, Marvin Bagley on the roster. But I think something that, doesn't get brought up a ton, or a reality that doesn't always get considered, is the fact that you don't necessarily know when you're going to have the opportunity to go get a player that you like, and a player that you had really high on your draft board, is specifically a guy who is so young and so early in his career, and for so many different reasons could have potentially, been not utilized right, even in a culture like Golden State, right? So, it makes total sense. And on the flip side too, like even with these, like, like tradable contracts, like even let's say, they don't keep neither Wiseman or Bagley over like the next couple of years, like worst case scenario, like part of the value as well is you're not going to have to pay Sadiq Bey upwards of $25 million a year, which he's about to command probably an insane extension, which is, as much as we like Sadiq and acknowledge the value that he can bring to a team, I don't even know if I'd be wanting to pay him 16 a year, and he's going to be getting at least 20, at least.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and that also kind of goes back to Troy Weaver. It's like, hey, we're not going to pay you. And if he likes you, he'll pay you. He did that to Isaiah Stewart, and everyone freaked out about his contract, which at first I'm like, what are you guys doing? Like, this isn't
right.
This isn't 2015. Like, Isaiah Stewart's contract in a couple of years is going to look pretty friendly for what he can provide. But there's also a bet on Isaiah. And that's a good thing, because clearly the coaching staff and obviously Troy Weaver sees something in him. But for Isaiah, like, they pretty much said, hey, we're going to pay you, but you're going to be the starting four for the future. And I think this is the year for Isaiah to kind of solidify that, because Troy kind of mentioned it, and I agree with them. This team needs another bit, but you'd think it could be Isaiah, but a four who can space the floor along with being as versatile as he is. So big year for Isaiah Stewart, man. Big year.
Absolutely. I think the ultimate thing that, just kind of put a bow on this topic a little bit, that's going to be the most interesting, is how Monty Williams uses them day one, and specifically how that evolves over time. Because, I think especially, with the fact that you do have this many bigs on the roster, for the first time in a while, Detroit can actually throw out different types of combinations of lineups. They can play with a small ball big instead of the small ball big just being their big. You know what I mean? Like they actually have the ability to mold their roster in game, or put on the court the guys that actually make sense and can potentially, adjust to what you need to play to win. So I think, the fact that, like you're going to have also that brilliant mind, and, that a guy who's so, in tune with players, and, in Monty Williams, a guy who's definitely going to appreciate the work ethic and the, the amount of passion these guys bring on a day-to-day basis, compared to a certain guy, DeAndre Ayton, that he had to work with over the last couple of years. So it's going to be fun to watch. I know that for sure. I know, again, like people thought when the Golden State Warriors started winning titles that the big man position was dead. But I think what we've seen, if anything, over the last few years, is that is insanely capped.
Right. And to see how it's evolved into the Joker, right? And you look at other teams too, of how they utilize their big. And that's kind of a very, very important question that correlates to winning, especially winning in playoff series, right? How you utilize your big, what lineups you put out, what kind of offensive role do you even have with your big, as far as stretching the floor, this or that. There's so many questions that I guess I trust Monty Williams. And you brought up DeAndre Ayton. Yeah, probably a head case would be an understatement to what he was used to in Phoenix. So I think with this core group, and Monty being a smart guy who knows how to win playoff games, who knows how to win in the regular season as well. I'm very excited for this Pistons season, guys. Very excited.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think for the first time in a while, I think they're walking into a season with like a fair amount of confidence. Like, despite the fact that they ended with the worst record in the league last season, we've talked about on the show numerous times, this is not a 17-win roster when you actually look at the overall talent. And then you think about the additions that this roster made, and also the momentum that these players are gaining throughout this summer as well. And, a lot of the work that they've been able to put in, and also the, I think just the things that we've been seeing is just the continued confidence of guys like Jalen Duren, guys like Cade Cunningham. But also, you start to see, especially that guy you got at number 5 overall, all you've seen from him so far is he looks ready to be on the court day one. That is the only thing we've seen, is that he plays good basketball.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's reasons to feel like you're walking in with some ammo in the magazine, for a lack of better terms.
And I feel like I got more confidence in one of the biggest questions I have, which is, over an 82-game season and for years to come, can Ivy and Cade play together and play at a high level together? Well, guess what? Troy, and with the help of Tom Gores, went and got a guy, at least with a resume that matches what he's done with guards. So at least for me, if we're talking personal confidence in that realm, I'm even more confident they can play together, given who they hired. So a lot of questions being answered. And this organization is very self-aware here. Like, okay, we know what our franchise is. It's based mostly on these two guys and, of course, Asar, Duren, and company. But for the most part, those are the two guys you expect to be superstars at some point. And you go get a guy that I think can utilize them correctly. So I'm excited. I really am.
Yeah. And to your point, Jeff, it's a little hard to see on here, but Stat News tweeted out on the 6th that the players with the most assists by a rookie over the last 2 seasons, number 1, Jaden Ivey at 387, and number 2, Cade Cunningham at 356.
Right. Wow.
So
playmakers.
Yep. So you talk about the sheer ability that they both have to pass the ball. They both benefit with having the ball in their hands, but at the same time, with the versatility of Cade's game, with the with the reliability already of Jaden Ivey's shot, of him being better with that day one than people thought he would be, and the continued improvement you saw in Ivey's rookie campaign as well. I think there's just, to your point, there's a lot of reasons to be excited about that duo. And I think, especially I'm excited to see how all those bigs as well in conjunction play in the pick and roll with the likes of Cade and Ivy, and even Monte Morris, I think, is going to help those guys a lot too. So
100%.
Right. And even Ivy being a score first guard, and he still has that many assists.
Yep.
Awesome. Like that is a lot more of an impressive stat if you really think about it.
Yeah. The confidence in these guys hitting their prime, like hitting the potential we expect we see for them, is even better when both the guys love ball. Like they come from big basketball families. They don't have any off the court issues. Like they just want to play ball and they want to win games, and they're going to be together for a long time. So they just fit what Detroit is and what they've been as the Pistons have been throughout their lifetime. So I just think the two perfect guys to be here in Detroit, just too perfect to build around.
Yeah, most certainly, without a question. I think I think you couldn't be more thrilled with where things are at as of right now. And I mean, obviously, sure, you could have Victor Wembanyama. That'd be more thrilling, of course. But on the flip side, I think overall they're in a position, really to be really successful. And again, it's when you look at how rebuilds happen over sports, like basketball in particular might be the hardest sport to rebuild. Because of the fact that in football, you have a 53-man roster. You have 7 draft picks at the very least each and every year, where you can significantly overhaul a solid portion of your team. Whereas in the NBA, you get 2 draft picks a year. In free agency, you might be able to add like two more guys.
And maybe a lottery, and an NBA lottery.
Right, and the lottery.
Yep. But ultimately, because even in the NFL, you can have a solid overall team. Might not necessarily be star-studded, but dang it, They're well coached. They have a good culture. They can go out there and win some games. In the NBA, it doesn't mean a damn thing if you don't have a guy that looks like a certified guy. And now that they have multiple guys who look like certified guys, that just changes the entire equation. Now it's just only a matter of time before they show up, turn up, and we have a good time watching it, right?
No question.
But speaking of something that wasn't as good of a time, Team USA went over to the FIBA World Cup. And guys, not only did Team USA not win in the FIBA World Cup, but they failed for the second World Cup in a row to medal. And you look in particular, the three teams that are at the top are Germany, who ended up winning the gold. Franz Wagner and Dennis Schroeder played their asses off. Schroeder won the MVP of the tournament. Actually, Serbia ended up second, and Canada ended up with the bronze. And so, obviously, you look at the way this shook out, and a week or two ago, I talked about how it was difficult to see a scenario where like Team USA lost. It was ultimately going to come down to, can their bigs, can Jaren Jackson, guys like that, step up? And they did not step up. I mean, Team USA, for lack of better terms, I think if this shows anything, this is what happens when you treat the World Cup like a B event. And I'm not saying that, that they have to send their best players each and every summer to everything. I understand that players play more games than ever. They need to manage their bodies and figure out how they can actually, make it in the NBA playoffs, because that's what ultimately matters. This World Cup does kind of land in an awkward time because there's the Olympics, last summer, and then now there's the World Cup this summer, and then another Olympics next summer because of how COVID affected everything. But again, this is what happens when you send a B roster, because the rest of the world, France might have had like one or two guys missing, maybe. Every other country sent their best guys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. And it's still hard too, because when you look at a lot of those rosters, and Germany, let's just use them as the best example because they won. I mean, Dennis Schroeder, great NBA player, great role player, I guess, and Franz Wagner, certainly, up and coming, great NBA player. Yeah, they got guys that can ball. I mean, they're pros. They can absolutely, but it's still hard to watch because you look at that Team USA roster and you see Anthony Edwards, you see Mikal Bridges, you see Jaren Jackson, you see guys that have bigger and better roles on their teams than Wagner and Schroeder have, right? And they still don't get the job done. That's, I think, what hurts to me. But you're right. I mean, it's about, yes, we did send our B team. Still a great team, but still nonetheless a B team.
Yep.
And I think other countries, other teams, other players stepped up when we didn't. And I guess those still are NBA players who have all the capability to do that. And they did it. So, yeah, as much as it stings, you can still kind of logically put the pieces together.
Right. But here's the other issue, because almost immediately after the World Cup, I mean, literally a day or two after the World Cup ended, we're now getting these reports about what Team USA's roster could look like next summer. Obviously, this being, the Olympic Games in Paris, a place that people love to be. Winning a gold medal in the Olympics is obviously something that's really, really significant to have on your resume. But according, I believe this was reported by Shams, but according to Shams, Woj, who all your insiders, reportedly, the current roster of guys that are interested in Team USA are LeBron James, Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, Anthony Davis, Kyrie Irving, Jason Tatum, Anthony Edwards, Devin Booker, De'Aaron Fox, Damian Lillard, Draymond Green, and Bam Adebayo. So essentially, the best we have to offer.
Yeah.
And here's where it's kind of sucky for USA basketball. When you can ultimately send that lineup at the Olympics and almost guarantee yourself that gold medal, do you even care about not being able to win the World Cup? Because on one hand, yes, Team USA, they're the standard setter in the world of basketball. And even though there are countries that are certainly catching up, the gap is no longer as significant as it used to be. But on the same hand, where Team USA has gotten themselves in trouble in the past is when they take their foot off the gas and when they don't treat it as serious. And ultimately, since they are the best team in the world, they're going to be faced with a different level of ridicule, a different level of skepticism. I mean, this is Team freaking USA we're talking about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, everybody that plays Team USA brings their best. Like they know what's at stake there. At least playing Team USA, what comes with beating Team USA. But I think the whole explanation on this, and Troy kind of hit on a little bit with why can a team with like a Dennis Schroeder, for example, in Germany take down Team USA? I think it's very simple. With that comes camaraderie, which has been built up through a long period of time. You have countries that guys have pride in playing consistently for their country. And then in USA, it's kind of like, you got it seems like the top of the top, at least in the NBA, everybody's just gotten content, right? It's like, hey, I make a ton of money playing basketball. I don't need to give my time to go play overseas in my off season where I can rest and get ready, especially guys that are probably on the other half of 30 years old. But
Right.
now you're seeing it's becoming a lot more personal, which a guy like LeBron James, who's rallying all the best of the NBA. But you look at that roster, that expected roster, a lot of guys that played together. LeBron, AD, Kyrie, Steph, KD, Draymond, like guys that have had years of camaraderie together playing either with each other or on all-star teams. So I think that's the part of what's missing with Team USA that was had years ago. Guys that were consistently signing up to play, guys that are familiar with each other. This Team USA B team was just kind of thrown together. Hey, go out there and play. And it obviously did not work out. But next year, because I hate the whole world champions discussion. I know I think we brought that up here on the podcast and talked about
World champion of what? Yeah.
That's the whole thing. Because again, we know USA is the cream of the crop for basketball. Now, whether you have a problem with them saying the world champions, and the game has become more global. I will admit that players are much better. You're seeing the top of the NBA, a lot of European guys. Doesn't take away from the fact that all those European players come to America to play in the National Basketball Association. So I think it's about time that the USA reminds the world and assembles a roster really of the best, because that's who should be playing at these World Cup or Olympic events.
Yeah, without a doubt. And ultimately, obviously, like with players, they have the ultimate say of what they're going to do in their summers. And especially guys like LeBron James, who were getting to the finals like just about every year for 7 or 8 years in a row, to ask him to do that and to play the Olympics each and every time when he's already won you multiple gold medals, it's a little unreasonable. But obviously for him to be able to come back, kind of his last dance with Team USA, so to speak, probably the last dance for a lot of these guys, for Kevin Durant, for Steph Curry, potentially even guys like Dame. There are a lot of players that this is probably their swan song, so to speak, with Team USA. And more than likely, like, let's be honest, by this time next year, we're going to forget about the World Cup, right? Like we're going to be focusing on Olympic basketball. We're going to be, like honed in on that. But like, to your point, Jeff, that's the thing I'm worried about with Team USA is that factor of the competitive nature, that desire, that eagerness to win for your country. Because got like countries, like Slovenia in particular, like with freaking Luka Doncic carrying it on his back, even like Germany, like how overjoyed they were when they won. Like this is like basketball's equivalent of the FIFA World Cup. Like this is a big event. This is a prestigious like world tournament of the best basketball players across the globe. And yes, you're not getting paid millions of dollars to go out and play for Team USA necessarily, but there's definitely sponsorships that can come from it. There's definitely brand and marketing deals, and that's assuming that this thing is about money, because let's be honest, just about every other player that plays in international competition, they're not making the living that these guys are. So I just think there's a lot of different components that go into it. I don't know what the ultimate solution is to this. I think it's just going to come down to like it's really on the players, right? Like it's ultimately going to come down to who's going to be that next player to really champion this next generation of Team USA, because it was really it was like Magic, it was MJ, and then it kind of was transitioned into Kobe and LeBron and Carmelo, and then kind of Kevin Durant, and kind of helped starting to take the reins a little bit as well, for so to speak. They're going to need a guy to step up and take those reins in the years to come. So
I think
it'll be interesting.
I think in a couple years, maybe Cade Cunningham goes over
Absolutely.
there and starts whooping global ass. So you never know.
Got it.
I'll say this much. I think it'd be great for Cade if he got to play in the next World Cup, because I mean, you even saw players like specifically like in Canada, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Luka Doncic were both on the court. Like 2 top 10 players in the world were in this tournament. Guys who both in their own right could convince themselves a way that they could get to the finals this season. Right? Like these are, so like when you talk about like, just because not all of the best players in the world are not playing in this, like there are numerous guys who are, for a lack of better terms, showing up other all-stars from this from this team. Now, I did just want to touch really quickly like just like one last thing about Team USA and like about the World Cup, and then after that we'll probably move on and never talk about this one again. But the thing that was the most shocking to me in particular was Jaren Jackson's ability or lack thereof to rebound. I mean, guys, Jaren Jackson Jr. averaged 2.9 rebounds a game. 2.9 between 2 games in World Cup action. He had 1 rebound.
Where was Walker Kessler at?
Yeah. I mean, Walker Kessler, he played 8 minutes a game. He was filling the bench. He was happy to be there. That was a player who was honored to be asked.
Yeah, Jaren's a true 4. Like you could play him at 5 situationally, but he's not a guy that you throw out there to go bang with dudes in the post and expect to get double-digit rebounds. Like to me, he's just not that dude. I don't know. Maybe I'm off on that, but clearly Team USA kind of proves
with that. Sean, should that give some concerns to Grizzlies fans, just knowing what their roster is going to look like for the first 25 games?
Absolutely, it should.
Yeah.
I mean, especially, like it's a problem that's a little bit more exacerbated in World Cup basketball, because when you talk about like FIBA basketball, it does have different rules. It's more of a traditional style or slower style of basketball. Big man play is really important in that aspect. So I definitely, you definitely have questions about his ability to crash the glass and what he can do in that regard. The thing that would bother me if I'm a Grizzlies coach or even just a Grizzlies fan is the fact that it's very apparent that the foul trouble thing is still not fixed. It is still not going away. I mean, he fouled out in 11 minutes of play in the quarterfinals against Italy. He played like 15 minutes against Lithuania. Like, if you look at the areas where Team USA like really struggled, it was when Jaren Jackson Jr. was effectively taken out of the game. And that's what teams were able to do as the tournament went on. So for Memphis in particular, 25 games where your top 2 is going to be, I mean, you obviously have Desmond Bane, a guy who can absolutely hoop. But other than that, you're going to be counting on Jaren Jackson Jr. and Marcus Smart. I mean, could they? There's a realistic chance that they don't even play. They don't even get 500 with that roster without Ja.
No, I wouldn't be shocked. Because again, in the whole rebounding thing, at least they got Steve-O, but regardless, without Ja, yeah, you're screwed. I mean, they just don't have much firepower. Like Desmond Bane, I like, but he's somebody that kind of. He's kind of inconsistent. He's not the guy, at least, to hold it down while Ja is out. Like, it's not like if Jason Tatum was out the first 25 games, Jaylen Brown would put up all NBA numbers. I don't think Bane's that guy. So, yeah, they're going to be struggling to swim for a little bit there without Ja. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, for sure. Really quickly, too. We didn't get to talk about this last week, I wanted to bring this up briefly. How weird was it that Paolo Banchero was as trash talky as he was with Italy, and how
Yeah.
he even was like, "What do you have to say to the fans of Italy?" Nothing. And then going and dunking on an alley-oop when they're up by 40 towards the end of the third quarter. I mean, I understand Team USA, they're gonna route teams. That's gonna happen in World Cup action, but am I overthinking it to be a little weirded out by that? If that's my franchise player, I'm not saying, like I'm doubting Paulo, but there's certainly a respect aspect that gets questioned a little bit more.
Wait, so kind of brief, what happened exactly? I didn't see this.
Okay, so Team USA last week they played Italy in World Cup action. Obviously, if you don't know, Paulo he actually committed to play for Team Italy.
Yeah.
Until he was asked to join Team USA, and he was like, "Oh, JK, I'm playing for Team USA." And it's like when in international play is not like other sports where it's like, oh, you can like be a free agent and go to another country. Like once you've committed to play for a country, you play for that country. It's pretty cut and dry. And so like when Paulo was getting drafted and when he was like, kind of before his rookie year, when he was talking about, I'd love to play for Team Italy in the Olympics. I'd love to rep, the Italians. And he even there are even some I think he even went over and did some photo shoots in his in the Italy gear, and they focused their whole marketing campaign on him. Like they were going to build their entire program around him. And in the last second, he was like, "Yep, Team USA, let's go." And so like that was already really weird and kind of an underlying, theme of an underlying story of the whole World Cup. But then something that didn't get talked about a whole ton, which I just thought in the moment was bizarre.
Look at the
Watch
score.
this. Look at the score. Look at where they're at in the game.
Procedure, what are you doing?
A press in the full court
and the alley-oop!
And a between the legs pass to Paulo for the alley-oop. Listen, I get it's fun. I get they're making a highlight play and they're enjoying playing basketball together. But given the context, is that not weird? Is that not something that if that was your franchise guy, you would say, come on, man, what are you doing?
Yeah, I think that's just, maybe that's just age showing a little bit there. I mean, you're up 30, plus to Team Italy. Like,
that put them up 39.
Yeah, I mean, it.
I'm not saying you have to go to the rack and do a straight layup, but like, why are you full court pressing at the end of the third quarter?
Yeah,
you actual D-bag.
Yeah,
like for a lack of better terms.
Against Procida too.
That's where when we talk about like the importance of having a franchise player like Cade and having like the right guys in the locker room, like these are some of the examples. And I'm not saying like Paulo's a bad guy or anything at all, but like this is like you said that's kind of where maybe the immaturity aspect is coming in a little bit. And like I definitely think I understand like he might have had some hurt feelings because like Italy came out and essentially called it a betrayal, and like we're very much we're not happy and made that known. But on the other hand, if you commit that you're going to play somewhere, like if you knew in the back of your head that Team USA was your ultimate goal,
then say it.
Then just don't even bring up Italy in the first place.
Right.
Keep your mouth shut. You know?
Because especially for a Team Italy who would kill to have a guy like
right. And I guess he could have, would have, should have known that he had the gifts and abilities and confidence that his rookie year was going to go as well as it did, where that could be an option for him, Team USA.
Yeah.
He knew better than anyone of how good this rookie year was going to be. So yeah, it's interesting. If I'm a Magic fan though, I'm not losing sleep over this.
Oh, of course. Right. 100%. But, in the other light, it is going to be interesting to see, like how that impacts like his international career, like going forward, should he, be playing with Team USA in the future? Like that's going to be a dynamic that's going to be really fascinating to watch for years to come, because I don't think Team USA is just going to take that laying down like they did in the World Cup. But, it is what it is, I suppose. Speaking of not lying down, the NBA is still fighting defiantly against load management. Essentially, earlier today, it was reported that the NBA is investigating and looking into implementing rules where teams wouldn't be able to rest two of their star players at the same time. Now, obviously, I don't know how they enforce that. I don't know how, like, I don't know how teams don't just call it like a stress injury and then they say, well, he's not resting, he's actually hurt. Like, I still think there's loopholes around this, but it is pretty clear, guys. The league is going to be cutting down on load management. Do you think this is a good thing? Do you think this could potentially have some consequences? What are your overall thoughts?
I think
As a fan, I think it's a great thing. I want to watch the best players every night, especially if I am going to pay a little bit of money to watch them in person. Of course, I
Yep.
want to see, especially the opposing team who comes in, the stars. So, yeah, absolutely, especially when it's these West Coast teams coming to the East or these East Coast teams coming to the West. For that sense, absolutely. But you got to remember, these are just human beings, right, with real bodies, just like you and me. That an injury is a very real thing, and a lot of injuries at least in the basketball world, can be very much treated and taken care of with rest. Especially that I think the average NBA player runs 3.5 miles a game. You do the math back to back. That's 7 miles in a game. That's a lot of pounding your feet against the ground. There's so many other factors too with it that I don't know. I guess I trust Adam Silver. I do think he's a great commissioner, but if I'm a coach, if I'm a trainer who's with these athletes and knows how important sometimes these load management games are, maybe I'm a little worried.
Yeah, and I think, to be honest, Sean and Troy, I think it's a double-edged sword because, and you kind of already talked about it, Sean, too. It's like I'm all for it. I'm with Adam Silver. I love how proactive he's been being. He's been trying to help out, especially with the whole load management stuff. But even for the thing where it's going to get tricky is players that have prior injuries that have kind of lurked around in their career. Like I remember LeBron last year and the year prior, he's always been out for, foot soreness because he sustained a foot injury, but he actually, it had nothing to do with the injury itself. It was just load management. So there's going to be loopholes for these things. Like I know, for a fact, a team like for Cade, for example, if he was much older, you could say, okay, well, shin soreness, right? You could kind of put it back to what he had, but still, how does the NBA know the legitimacy of that?
Kawhi and his team are in the lab figuring out how he can sit out a 41 of 82 games. You know what I mean? They are piecing it together.
No one would question it.
And I think that's maybe where Adam Silver's perspective is coming from, is looking at star players abusing this, because there's abuse.
Yeah.
We have to call it that there's abuse, but there's also very much needed load management. Yeah.
And I also think there's just the given reality, to these players that you do have a significant role in the overall ratings of our games. And if you are going to sit out, and especially if you're going to sit out multiple stars, there has to be consequences, especially when you're depriving, numerous amount of fans from an experience or from something that was advertised. And, I understand that that's not the team's problems. That's not the players' problems more specifically. It is the sports problem. And it is something where, hey, you need a reason to be invested on a week-to-week basis. Now, I do think, unfortunately, that one of the problems is that 82 games in a season might be too much. As much as I adore basketball and want as much of it as humanly possible, I think the fact that there's not as much urgency on a night-to-night basis is a factor. But that's essentially saying, hey, you should all take less money. Who in the NBA is going to say yes to that? Not the players, not the owners, not nobody.
Right.
So that's just the reality. But so since that's never going to fully be a solution, I do think it makes sense to try and come up with some restrictions and how you can try and lay this down with things like nationally televised games, because that's really when it especially sucks, right? Is like when you're turning on the TV, it's like Nuggets Sixers were supposed to play each other down the stretch last season when Embiid and Joker were playing for MVP. Joker just ends up sitting out that game, essentially just kind of load manages a little bit down the stretch. Granted, they won a title, so that, it worked out pretty well for them. But on the flip side, like, there's just numerous examples like that throughout the year of, man, we were deprived of this game, not because someone's out due to injury, but because someone just chose to sit out tonight, or just because the training staff chose that this was the rest game.
Yeah, and there's that kid in Chicago or kid in Milwaukee, wherever, that is a big fan of Kawhi Leonard, buys tickets months in advance, goes to the game, and he's out of the game due to load management. That's the other part that I think Adam Silver's trying to reach, that demographic, which I think there's truth to that. I think that's terrible. Now, I don't know how you fix that. Like, even if you allow the person to refund their ticket after the injury report comes out, you're still, when's the next time you're going to be able to see LeBron James? Like, he comes, especially if you're on the East, it's twice a year. Like, so it's a bad situation no matter what. At least they're trying, but I just don't see a solution here, like an ultimate solution. Like, you kind of got to give and take a little bit. It's on the players as well. Like, Adam Silver can't make them walk to the game and be there. It's a little bit of both here. It's a tough situation overall. It really is.
Yeah. I mean, according to ESPN, the average ticket in the NBA as of 2022 now costs over $50. And after they spend money on food, drinks, parking, and all those things, it comes up to about $72 per person on average for an NBA game. That is a lot of money to be spending on any event, let alone an NBA game. And for people, like you said, that do not have, who have much more limited resources, where this is something that you plan, for a lot of people, months or, weeks in advance.
Right.
Like, this is, it might just be another night for a lot of these guys in the league, but for a lot of people throughout the country and throughout the world, that's like one of the biggest nights of their lives. That's something they've been looking forward to. And so, obviously there's the human element on all sides. There's, there's no perfect solution, but again, it does have to be addressed, because as much as I love seeing, everyone healthy and ready for playoff basketball, like, the journey there can't be unbearable. Like, we have to be able to have some regular season basketball to sink our teeth into, some exciting matchups throughout the week and throughout the season. There's just this culture of load management, especially when they sit, because that's the thing, is really when they're sitting multiple of their stars in one game and they're just saying, tonight's just chalked. Like that, like, come on. Like, that's just unacceptable at that point.
Yeah.
So, and speaking of something unacceptable, guys, the last thing we're going to talk about tonight's pod, Kevin Porter Jr. Went and, specifically, he is, as of today, in custody. There were reports that he had the reason he is in custody is for charges relating to domestic violence. According to reports, he had struck his girlfriend, who was a WNBA player. She actually was originally from the Detroit area and was drafted by the Indiana Fever. And she was taken to the hospital with at least one broken bone and bruising. So, when you hear that type of story, it's horrific in any light. We've talked about before how, especially with like the Miles Bridges situation and, any other thing that comes up, like, this doesn't have a place in basketball whatsoever, or let alone in society. But on top of that, this is a young guy whose career was already on the ropes as it is. I don't see a professional basketball team taking a chance on this guy. I think his career's done.
He's got to get the Miles Bridges treatment. Like, he just has to. I mean, Miles Bridges was essentially blue balled for most of the NBA for what he did. So I expect the same energy for Kevin Porter Jr. And this isn't really the first time he's been in these waters. And I don't know about specifically this situation, but at least being in media for having character concerns. I mean, this was a thing from coming out of the draft. This was when he was with Cleveland. Had a great season last year, or a pretty good season with Houston. But overall, like, the character stuff has kind of just followed Kevin Porter Jr. Throughout his career. So whether it's him, his inability to kind of escape where he came from. And maybe that's things he saw as a kid. I mean, whatever the case may be, it's just unacceptable, whether in the NBA or like you said, in society as a whole. So it's disgusting. And I hope Kevin Porter Jr. gets what's coming to him. Like that's, just because if you make a certain amount of money or you have a certain status or you have a certain job doesn't absolve you from getting the same treatment as an average Joe. So
100%.
hopefully I'll let the law kind of cook here, but he should get everything coming to him.
Right. And I think even though Troy, like this isn't the first case that we've seen of something like this, I think especially for like people like us who are such big fans of the game that have such admiration for the players and the people that were able to get themselves in that position in the first place. I think for me, there's just that, like obviously there's that feeling of what are you doing? You're an absolute moron. Like, how dare you lay your hands on a woman? Like absolutely insane. But on the other hand is how do you throw away this opportunity of a lifetime?
Yeah.
This thing that you dreamed your entire life about, this thing that you put all this work into, you threw away over something that you were taught not to do in kindergarten.
Right. Yeah. That's certainly a big factor in this, Sean, is that reality of that, these are the 400 best basketball players in the world. What an opportunity to represent your city, your family, your high school, your college, your friends, your family, and to blow it over, who knows what, but no matter what, it's inexcusable to do. So the Miles Bridges treatment, Jeff, you brought up, that probably has to be the consequence. So,
well, and the sad thing is the difference between the Miles Bridges treatment, between Bridges and Kevin Porter Jr. After a season when the PR died down a little bit more, Miles Bridges is going to play in the NBA this year. He has a contract. He has a deal with the Hornets. He's going to play. And the reason why is because he's that talented. Like he's talented enough to where he can get a second chance. Right. And that is the unfortunate reality is there is a certain talent factor that shows like the tolerance that these types of franchises will have. And, obviously, like Kevin Porter Jr. just doesn't meet that level at all. But I mean, just talking about the, like obviously the human element and her being okay is really what matters in this situation. But this is a basketball podcast. You have to talk about the implications on the Rockets because guys, not only was this a guy that you were, seemingly, building around and, potentially positioning your franchise around with him and Jalen Green. But now on top of that, he was the only guy that showed up for Ime Udoka's press conference back in April. And not that, not that that's a end of the world. Like, oh, that's the thing that you're really going to miss from him. I mean, like the fact that he was the only one there and now he's gone.
Yeah.
And in particular, just how much Houston invested in him, time, resources, all those things. Like, they have Amen Thompson who they can naturally slide into the starting five. And I think that will ultimately be better for the franchise in a lot of ways. This still is a situation where this season for Houston just got even more rocky when it was already going to be interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know about you guys, but I am fascinated to see how this whole situation plays out. But I think one thing's pretty apparent. KPJ's done in the league.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the Rockets, to your point, Sean, were a team that already had its own problems and that we were interesting to see and kind of more of the popcorn team on League Pass. And now, wow, I guess the trend continues of being an interesting team, but it's unfortunate that this had to be the event that made them, quote unquote, more interesting. Yeah.
That's why drafting the human being comes into play, not just the basketball player, right? Like,
Well, because again, we talk about this all the time. Every player who's drafted in the NBA has talent. They're all insanely talented. The things that separate these players from being good to great are the minuscule things. And when that comes down to like the minuscule things, the human element is one of the most important factors in a player's success. I mean, Michael Jordan as an athlete was insanely talented, but what made Mike was his will to win, his will to compete, his will to work. What made Kobe was the Mamba mentality, was the fact that he was looking to kill every single time he was out on the court. Like every single guy who comes in the league has an elite level of athleticism. Otherwise, they wouldn't be drafted in the first place. But the thing that really matters is who's the guy between those ears showing up in the gym. I mean, Karl Anthony Towns, from a talent standpoint, one of the highest rated big men ever, was the guy that every team was choosing they would build their team around after his rookie season. What do we think of him now?
Right.
And it has nothing to do with his ability on the basketball court. It's whenever he opens his mouth, you question life and everything that surrounds it. And so, like, the person is absolutely essential, because when you're putting your chips behind someone, especially when you're putting those significant resources, you got to be dang sure that they're going to do everything they can to maximize the potential that you believe that they can have. Like, this is when you get to this point of when you get to this stage of the game, it's a league of inches.
Inches.
That's right. Right.
Yeah.
I think we talked about that once before. Like, even the mechanical differences, the athletic ability difference of, like, even, let's just say, a Chris Paul and a Chauncey Billups, as far as talent, isn't much different. It's just about on the court, that extra little boost, that one player gets over the other. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's about those things that they can recognize that are happening in real time. It's about, the guys that can lift up and encourage the teammates around them. There's a lot of different factors, and, we just find it especially important to point it out, because dang it, what's something that we say on this podcast quite a bit? Basketball's not played on paper.
It is not. That is true.
We're going to keep slamming that one home, because dang it works for us every time. But boys, it was really fun to get back on here with y'all and chop it up once again. Thank you both for being here. Thank you to everyone who tuned in and joined us this week. If you like the From Half Court podcast, be sure you like this video, subscribe down below, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss when From Half Court goes live. But also follow my guys on X at Troy Sergey 44, my boy Jeff on X at Jeff Iafrady. But that, folks, to do it here. Thank you so much for listening. We'll catch you guys next time from Half Court. Be sure you're subscribed